When the moon begins to fade, it doesn't happen with a sudden flash or noise. It happens in silence, a hush that feels deeper than sound itself. The light that once brushed softly against oceans and rooftops thins like mist in the morning. People look up, expecting it to return from behind clouds, but there are no clouds tonight. The stars seem sharper, the sky darker, and something ancient inside every watcher feels the shift, a slow unraveling of the familiar night. The moon, steady for eons, is slipping away. For hours, its glow weakens, as if the lunar body is losing the will to shine. The craters blur into a pale smear, a ghost dissolving in its own reflection. Those who stay awake notice the tides calming too soon, their waves uncertain. Even the winds hesitate, unsure how to breathe without the pull that once guided the rhythms of sea and sky. A strange coolness falls upon the land, not from the air, but from within the heart of the night itself. The moon, once the keeper of dreams, is dimming beyond reach. In this dimming, the world feels both vast and intimate. Every shadow stretches longer, every sound sharper. Without lunar light, the stars multiply, filling the darkness with a quiet abundance. The constellations, once muted by the moon's presence, now shimmer with raw brilliance. Yet that beauty feels hollow, like a song missing its melody. For millennia, life measured time by that glowing orb: crops, migrations, tides, and sleep. Now, time feels unanchored, drifting without rhythm or reason. No astronomer can explain it. Telescopes show only fading outlines, a sphere dissolving like a breath on glass. Theories rise, maybe dust clouds, maybe cosmic interference, maybe something new beyond comprehension. But explanations do little to fill the void of feeling. There is a sorrow not found in science, a deep, instinctual ache, like losing something sacred and personal. Humanity realizes it never truly looked at the moon until now, at the very moment it's being taken away. Animals feel it first. The wolves that once howled to the night fall silent. Sea turtles wander confused, their ancient guidance gone. Even nocturnal birds circle aimlessly, their patterns broken. Nature itself seems to pause, searching for a pulse it can no longer sense. Forests stand still, and waves rise out of sync. The world feels unfinished. As if the story of night is missing its punctuation mark, that silver pause that reminded life when to rest, when to dream. Those who dream find their visions darker now. Without lunar light, the mind wanders into unfamiliar corridors. The moon had always softened the night, a silent guardian at the edge of the unknown. Now, without it, dreams become colder, more honest. People wake at odd hours, not knowing why. The moon's pull on sleep and tides had always been gentle, invisible, yet now, in its absence, the imbalance becomes clear. The human heart, too, is a tide. It feels the loss. The oceans grow restless in strange ways. Though tides weaken, there is an eerie stillness across vast waters, as though the sea itself is mourning. Sailors speak of strange horizons, of stars reflecting too sharply on motionless surfaces. Scientists measure changes but cannot name the feeling those changes bring. Without the moon, gravity's rhythm remains, but its music is muted. The planet still turns, but something has gone missing from its heartbeat. Children ask simple questions. Where did it go? Will it come back? Parents hesitate, their words fumbling in the soft dark. How do you explain the vanishing of something so constant, so woven into story and science alike? Myths revive themselves, whispers of gods reclaiming their light, or of celestial balance shifting toward a new dawn. But no dawn comes early. The nights stretch longer, and sleep grows heavier. The moon's absence teaches silence. In far observatories, people stay awake, watching, hoping for a flicker. But there is none. The black void where it once hung feels wrong, like a missing note in a familiar tune. Machines hum softly, but their hum cannot fill the space of that lost luminescence. The absence begins to feel alive, not empty, but purposeful, as if the universe has chosen to teach through loss. Light, it seems, was never the moon's only gift. Its very being carried meaning, reflection itself. Poets begin to write again, not in wonder, but in longing. They describe the moon as memory, as a friend who left quietly without a goodbye. Pain and beauty intertwine in their verses. How strange that the night could still shimmer with stars, yet feel incomplete. Lovers miss the silver trails across their windows, travelers lose their guide, and even the deserts feel colder. The moon, they write, was never just light, it was companionship across distance. Months pass. The darkness deepens but becomes familiar. Humanity adjusts, it always does. Artificial lights grow stronger, calendars shift, and technology fills the gap of rhythm. But something ineffable remains broken. People look up out of habit, still expecting to see the soft, round guardian hanging in the sky. That expectation itself becomes a kind of faith, not in science or story, but in return. For deep down, every species that has ever known the moon carries its imprint. In quiet corners of the world, the elderly tell children how it used to glow, how it turned the oceans to silver and made shadows dance. They tell tales of how it followed them home, how it waxed and waned like breath. These stories, at first, are just comfort. But over time, they become history. The moon becomes legend. In its absence, humanity rediscovers the art of remembering. What was once taken for granted is now cherished in silence. The earth begins to change, subtly. Without lunar tides, coastlines shift slower, but winds grow unpredictable. The atmosphere learns a new balance. Plants that bloomed by moonlight now turn early or late, confused by the eternal night's rhythm. Yet life persists. It always does. Nature, even in confusion, finds new paths. And perhaps this is the secret the moon's departure reveals, that light is not the only guide. Adaptation is its own kind of illumination. Yet, in certain nights, a faint shimmer appears, a glow like a memory lingering on the edge of sight. Some say it's an illusion, a trick of human hope. Others claim the moon left behind a trace, an echo of itself woven through gravity and time. Perhaps the moon, in its vanishing, did not die but transformed. Maybe its light went deeper, beyond visibility, a new kind of reflection, hidden in the unseen fabric of the cosmos. Dreamers still feel it. In sleep, they wander under silver skies that no longer exist. The subconscious remembers what the eyes forget. They walk along phantom beaches where waves still respond to a pull that isn't there. These dreams feel real, too real, and when they wake, they carry the ache of remembering something both gone and eternal. The moon, perhaps, has moved into the realm of dreams, glowing now within rather than above. As generations pass, songs remain. The moon becomes a symbol not of night, but of endurance, of reflection, of cycles even in absence. It reminds life that endings are only another phase unseen. The word moonlight continues to exist in language, even if not in sky. And every word that holds it becomes a lantern, a memory glowing softly against the great dark. The moon, though gone, still speaks. Through the way people describe beauty, the stars grow more vivid with each year. Constellations shift slightly, freed from their silver neighbor's dominance. Astronomers find new patterns, new truths hidden behind what was once masked by the moon's glow. Some say this new darkness is a gift that without the moon, humanity finally sees farther into the universe. But in that gift lies a loneliness too vast to name. The further they look outward, the more they long for what once shone close. And yet, every so often, there comes a night when something stirs in the black. A shimmer, faint, fleeting, almost shy. It doesn't last long, but for those who see it, hope flares like a small fire in the chest. Perhaps it's not the moon returning, but a message. A reminder that what vanishes may not be lost. The universe has always been a story of cycles, of appearing and fading, of light finding new forms. When the moon went away, humanity learned something the stars had always known, that silence can hold more meaning than sound, that darkness too is sacred. Without it, life might never have learned to listen so deeply, to gaze upward not just in wonder, but in reverence. The night became a teacher, the absence a kind of grace. The moon's departure was not an ending, but an invitation to understand what light truly means. So the story of the moon does not close with disappearance. It lingers, endlessly echoing across time, like soft waves touching unseen shores. Somewhere, perhaps, it still exists invisible, altered, or traveling through another realm of being. And in every heartbeat that remembers its glow, in every tide that still whispers its name, the moon remains. Not above us now, but within the eternal rhythm, the quiet companion of every dreaming soul. It begins so quietly that most can't feel it. The air seems the same, the oceans still, the stars unmoved. But deep beneath the surface of things, beneath bones, beneath soil, beneath the hidden rhythm of tides, something has changed. The moon's disappearance leaves behind a silence not only of light but of force. Gravity, that invisible whisper binding sea to shore and breath to heartbeat, has loosened just slightly. It is a gentle, imperceptible absence, but it ripples through everything alive. At first, no one notices. The world looks almost unchanged, like a face still smiling after loss, pretending nothing has happened. But the difference lies in the way leaves fall. They drift slower now, twisting oddly as if unsure of where the ground is. Ocean waves break a little softer, a little late. Even the smallest grains of sand seem to rest lighter upon the earth. The subtle tug that once called everything home has gone faint. The planet sighs without realizing it. Scientists detect it through instruments long before people feel it. Their readings show that the gravitational balance between Earth and Moon, the dance that has shaped every tide and tilt for billions of years, has faltered. Equations no longer fit. The pull that once stabilized Earth's wobble has vanished, and the axis, that silent spine of planetary motion, begins to wander. Slowly, invisibly, the Earth tilts in thought, uncertain of its place in space. Days remain the same length, for now. But the nights feel longer not by clocks, but by sensation. Without the moon's pull, the Earth's rotation becomes a touch freer, a little less restrained. It spins with an almost imperceptible haste, as if released from an ancient promise. Over time, seconds slip between cracks of measurement, accumulating like forgotten dust. The planet is relearning how to move, and the change hums in every current of air. The oceans, once the most obedient servants of gravity, begin to misbehave. Their tides no longer rise and fall with the same discipline. Instead, they wander, small surges appearing at strange hours, waves lingering too long on the sand. Sailors at sea notice the strangeness first. Their ships list differently on open waters, as though the very heart of the ocean has lost its rhythm. Without the moon's tug, the seas must learn to breathe on their own. Birds sense it too. Migratory paths that once followed magnetic and gravitational cues start to drift. Flocks veer a little off course, landing where they never meant to go. Some species adapt, finding new routes in instinct's memory. Others falter, confused by the slight but constant distortion in the pull of the world. The skies, once written with perfect patterns, become uncertain scripts, nature rewriting itself mid-sentence. On land, even the weight of a body feels different. People don't notice right away, but over weeks, there's a subtle lightness to every step. Things fall just a fraction slower. A dropped cup takes a heartbeat longer to hit the floor. The difference is too small to see, yet the human body, so finely attuned to balance, feels it in dreams. Gravity no longer hugs quite as tightly. Sleepers drift deeper, minds floating between the earth and what used to hold it still. Engineers and architects begin to see tiny shifts in the world's infrastructure. Bridges sway slightly more. Towers settle unevenly. Pendulums, those patient recorders of the Earth's pulse, no longer swing in perfect arcs. Clocks drift out of sync by seconds, then minutes, tracing the slow unraveling of cosmic order. The moon's quiet governance, once taken for granted, had been the steady metronome of balance. Now, even time itself leans differently. Deep underground, tectonic plates respond in their own language. Freed from a portion of lunar influence, their pressures redistribute. Fault lines hold their breath. Earthquakes don't happen more often, but when they do, they feel deeper, like the planet is exhaling in long, uneven sighs. The crust, the mantle, the core, all parts of the planet subtly adjust to a new equilibrium. The Earth's skin trembles as if remembering how it was before the moon ever existed. Forests sway differently in the wind. Without the same gravitational pull to guide sap and growth cycles, certain trees lean more than they should, reaching for a balance they cannot quite find. Roots twist deeper, sensing instability not in soil, but in space itself. Flowers that bloomed according to lunar cycles now open unpredictably, chasing light that no longer feels aligned with time. Even nature's pulse, the ancient rhythm of bloom and rest, has missed a beat. The night sky, though brighter with unmasked stars, seems heavier now. Without the moon's gentle balance, Earth's orbital dance grows ever so slightly eccentric. Astronomers watch constellations rise a fraction earlier each season. The difference is mathematical at first, but emotional later. The sky feels less centered. The harmony that once tied Earth's movement to the lunar pull has given way to a quiet dissonance. The planet still dances, but to a tune without tempo. In quiet homes, tides of emotion shift too. Human hearts, linked unknowingly to the same lunar rhythms that guided seas, begin to feel an odd detachment. Moods swing without reason. Sleep patterns fracture. For centuries, the moon's gravity had whispered to the human body through its subtle magnetism, sinking fluids, minds, and dreams. Now, the absence leaves an emptiness not just in sky, but in soul. People feel weightless inside, unanchored. Farmers, too, find their work changed. Crops that once followed lunar calendars now defy pattern. Soil dries faster. Moisture retreats strangely, and seeds take longer to respond. Generations of wisdom passed down through the cycles of waxing and waning lose their meaning overnight. Agriculture, so quietly tied to the moon's rhythm, must relearn the seasons without that subtle tug of guidance. The Earth itself seems to breathe irregularly now. Over months, scientists note another shift. Earth's precession, the slow wobble of its axis, accelerates slightly. The moon once acted as a stabilizer, keeping the planet's tilt near steady. Without it, the tilt begins to wander faster, reshaping climates in whispers. Deserts expand where rains used to fall. Snow drifts where flowers once grew. It's not cataclysmic, but insidious, the slow kind of change that remakes worlds without breaking them. Satellites orbit differently now. Their paths, once calculated with precision, begin to deviate by tiny degrees. Space agencies adjust constantly, nudging machines back into line. But even machines can feel the missing tug, their predictable paths now slightly uncertain, like dancers missing a lead. The moon's quiet gravity had not only shaped tides, but technology, the silent scaffolding of modern life. Now even the artificial must adapt to nature's new emptiness. Somewhere in the ocean's deep trenches, ancient currents shift their tone. Cold water once guided by lunar cycles now drifts slower, altering ecosystems built over millions of years. Plankton blooms at strange times, coral spawns without synchronicity. The chain of life bends, fragile but enduring. Evolution, slow and patient, begins its work again, crafting survivors for a world subtly unmoored from its oldest rhythm. On mountain peaks, instruments detect that Earth's gravitational field itself has changed shape ever so slightly, but enough to redraw maps. What was once constant is now dynamic, fluid. Gravity, it turns out, is not a single force, but a conversation, one that the moon once took part in. Now, Earth must speak alone. And solitude changes tone. The pull toward the heavens feels weaker, yet the longing grows stronger. Humanity begins to miss not just the moon, but the dialogue it represented. People begin to float metaphors from physics into philosophy. They speak of how love, too, feels like gravity, invisible, binding, essential. And just as the moon's absence left Earth wobbling, so does the loss of connection leave the heart unstable. The small shift in tides becomes a mirror for the human spirit, a reminder that every bond, however distant, shapes us. Even the smallest tug, when missing, leaves its echo. As seasons roll on, the absence becomes normal. Children grow up never knowing the precise pull that guided their ancestors' world. But the elders feel it still in aching joints, in restless sleep, in the silence between waves. They describe it not as loss, but as a memory, the body remembering gravity as it once was. The young listen, half believing, half dreaming, their lives shaped by an unseen gentleness they will never know. Then comes a strange peace. The Earth, though slightly off balance, finds a new rhythm. Gravity's song changes key, but the melody continues. The oceans learn to move without instruction. The winds adopt new routes. Humanity, too, adjusts, its imagination filling the sky where physics faltered. The moon's absence has become part of existence, not a wound, but a reshaped scar that gleams in darkness. And somewhere in that shift, life begins again in new ways. Creatures evolve subtle differences, lighter bones, altered instincts, fresh patterns of migration and bloom. The missing tug becomes a quiet teacher, guiding creation toward resilience. Gravity, though smaller now, continues to hold the Earth close enough to itself. The planet remains whole, though forever changed, living proof that even in loss, balance can be reborn. The first nights after the moon's departure would be unsettlingly quiet, as though the world itself were holding its breath. The familiar silver glow that softened every shape, that spilled across oceans and rooftops, would simply be gone. In its absence, the stars would awaken in fierce numbers, piercing through the dark veil with cold, delicate fire. People would step outside and feel the depth of that darkness, how it settled against their skin like cool silk, how it stretched endlessly, unbroken and pure. Without the moonlight, cities would notice a subtle change. First, street lamps seeming sharper, more isolated, as if each one guarded its own small circle of safety. Countryside fields, once brushed by soft lunar brightness, would fall into inkier shadows. Farmers, travelers, and night wanderers would find the world suddenly foreign. Every rustle in the grass, every glint of starlight on dew, would feel amplified. It would be beautiful, but strange, like a familiar song played in a minor key. In the wilderness, animals that thrived beneath the moon's watchful glow would stir uneasily. Predators, who hunted by faint light, would hesitate, their senses confused by the new density of dark. Owls, accustomed to spotting the faintest movement on the ground, would rely more on sound and scent. For some, this deeper night would be a gift, a better camouflage. For others, it would be a challenge that rewrites instincts built over countless generations. Seas too would reflect the change, though at first glance they would seem unchanged, waves still whispering, the horizon still endless. But if you stood near the shore and waited, you'd sense something different. The pull and release of the tide would be gentler, less commanding. The water would lap rather than surge, the heartbeat of the ocean softened. The moon's grip on the waters had been loosened, and the seas were learning a new rhythm, slower, quieter, more uncertain. Sailors would notice it before anyone else, how the high tide no longer reached the familiar marks on the dock, how the moonless nights at sea made navigation a lonely art. The sky above them, rich with constellations, would offer no pale companion to guide their eyes. They would speak of a darkness that felt infinite, of horizons swallowed by shadow. And yet, among them, a quiet awe would grow, for never before had the stars looked so endless or the Milky Way so alive. In villages near the equator, where moonlight once bathed the palm leaves and rippling fields, the darkness would deepen into a velvet calm. Fires would burn longer in the evenings, and stories would replace the absent moon. Elders would speak of the old nights, when the moon carried secrets across the sky, when lovers and travelers used its light as a gentle guide. Now, with that light gone, voices would grow softer, words slower, as if everyone instinctively respected the magnitude of the dark. Astronomers would find their work transformed. No lunar glare to wash away the faint light of distant galaxies, the night sky would be pristine. Telescopes would capture images of starlit clusters, supernovas, and distant nebulae with a clarity Earth had never known. Yet even they would admit that the perfection of this clarity carried a sadness. The moon had been a friend to both dreamers and scientists, its phases marking time and wonder alike. Children, lying beneath this unfamiliar sky, would ask questions their parents couldn't easily answer. Why does it feel colder? Why does the dark seem thicker? The truth would be gentle. The air feels colder because the mind senses. What's missing? The familiar reflection of warmth, the emotional comfort of that glowing orb. Darkness would no longer be just the absence of light. It would become a feeling, soft and heavy, wrapping the world in a strange peace. Over the continents, nocturnal flowers that once opened under the moon would bloom in hesitation. Their petals, accustomed to the rhythm of lunar cues, would falter, then slowly adjust to starlight alone. The natural clocks of pollinators, bats, moths, tiny shimmering insects would stutter, but nature, ever patient, would find its balance again. Slowly, new rhythms would form, carried not by the moon but by the silent pulse of time itself. Humans, sensitive in ways they rarely admit, would find sleep changing too. Without the moon's phases, the subtle cycles of rest and alertness that matched its waxing and waning would blur. Some would dream deeper, as the dark offered a truer silence. Others would wake more often, searching subconsciously for that missing light. In time, though, even sleep would find its equilibrium beneath the new sky, as everything eventually does. Artists would capture this era of moonless nights with fascination. Paintings of landscapes bathed in starlight, oceans glittering faintly beneath constellations, faces illuminated by campfires instead of lunar glow. The absence of the moon would become a muse, its loss shaping poetry, music, and dreams in ways that comfort and sadness intertwine. Humanity, ever creative, would turn even loss into art. Travelers and wanderers, who once measured distance by the moon's gentle rise, would feel a disconnection at first. Navigating by starlight alone would require old skills and new patience. But the sky would reward them, shooting stars more visible, the band of the Milky Way a shimmering path across the heavens. With time, people would once again find guidance not in a single light, but in the infinite tapestry above. Religions and philosophies might shift subtly too. The moon had always symbolized change, cycles of growth and decline, the reassurance that light returns after darkness. Without it, teachings and beliefs would adapt, perhaps finding comfort in permanence instead of recurrence. Humanity's stories would reshape, turning the missing moon into a memory of renewal rather than loss. In mountain villages and wide deserts, nights would become truly dark for the first time in memory. The stars would spill like powdered silver across the heavens, forming rivers of light no one had ever fully seen before. The absence of the moon would reveal the true night sky, a cosmic ocean stretching forever outward. Those who stood beneath it would feel small, yes, but also part of something vast and peaceful. Some people would light lanterns where they once gazed at the moon, as if to fill the gap in the sky. Others would simply sit in the dark, finding comfort in the weight of it. There would be moments of quiet melancholy, but also serenity. For in the absence of one familiar light, countless smaller ones would become visible, twinkling in gentle promise. With months passing, people would begin to notice how time itself feels slightly different. Without the moon's changing face to mark nights and months, calendars would rely entirely on the sun. It would feel less cyclical, more linear, and yet, with every rotation, the stars would remind them that time, too, is an endless dance, only its music has changed. The oceans would continue to whisper in their softened voice, their tides smaller but still alive. Coastal ecosystems would adapt, reshaping themselves in new forms of balance. Fish that once followed tidal cues would find others, temperature, current, magnetism. The earth, though altered, would not stop, it would simply adjust, quietly, gracefully, like someone learning to walk again after a long dream. Farmers would notice slightly altered seasons in subtle ways, shifts in blooming, minor changes in animal behavior, patterns of migration that no longer align with old calendars. They would write new ones, of course, guided by sunlight, wind, and soil instead of moonlight. And over generations, those who came after would not miss what was gone, they would only know the beauty of what remained. Deep into the nights of the first moonless years, poets would whisper of the silver silence, the calm that settled upon earth when the moon departed. They would speak of how shadows became thicker, how stars grew closer, how dreams deepened. Their words would comfort the restless and soothe the fearful, turning what could have been loneliness into reverence. In high observatories, scientists would continue to study the sky, tracing the orbits of satellites and asteroids that once shared space with the moon. They would measure, observe, and learn more about the Earth's delicate balance, realizing how intimately one small companion had shaped so much. Knowledge, as always, would soften loss with understanding. Generations later, stories of the moon would linger like folklore. Children would hear of it the way ancient people once spoke of vanished beasts or lost lands. They would imagine it as a guardian of tides, a keeper of nights, and in their dreams, perhaps they would still see it glowing faintly behind the veil of stars. And through all this, the earth would keep spinning. Its forests breathing, its oceans murmuring, its winds tracing new paths. The absence of the moon would not end life, nor joy, nor wonder, it would only change the lens through which these things are seen. In time, the dark would no longer feel empty but full, vast, and tender. By then, humanity would have learned something precious, that even when something constant disappears, the universe still holds beauty, still offers light in other forms. The moon's departure would become a lesson in adaptation, a quiet story of resilience told beneath endless, glittering stars. It begins as a whisper across the shoreline, the sound of waves arriving late, uncertain, missing their familiar beat. The moon's disappearance, once just a wound in the sky, now shows itself in motionless water. The oceans, those vast lungs of the earth, no longer breathe in their usual rhythm. The pull that once drew them forward and back, night after night, is gone. What remains is a quiet, heavy stillness that unnerves even the wind. At first glance, the sea appears calm, too calm. Fishermen, standing where waves once lapped eagerly, find the water hesitant, like a creature unsure of itself. The tides rise irregularly, drawn only by the faint tug of the sun, whose pull is weaker, distant. High tides no longer kiss the sand at dawn, low tides linger far too long. The heartbeat of the planet falters, slow and uneven. The ocean, once a metronome, now plays in broken time. Marine life feels the loss first. Creatures that have evolved for millions of years to the moon's command lose their pattern. Crabs wait for tides that never come. Sea turtles wander too soon toward beaches, their eggs left vulnerable to heat and hunger. Coral reefs, which relied on the timing of tidal currents to spread life, release their spores in confusion. Without the moon's rhythm, the sea's great cycles fall into disarray. In coastal villages, the changes ripple through daily life. Nets cast at the wrong hour return empty. Boats that once rested safely at high tide now tilt on dry sand, abandoned by waters that forget their schedule. The familiar creak of piers, once matched to the moon's phases, fades into stillness. People begin to understand that tides were more than movement, they were memory, the ocean's way of keeping time with the stars. As months pass, shorelines alter shape. Beaches that once widened and shrank like breathing lungs now sit unmoving, hardened by still water. Estuaries dry in odd places while others flood endlessly, their balance undone. The boundaries between land and sea blur, and the delicate ecosystems that thrived in between begin to collapse. Salt water seeps too far inland, and freshwater rivers hesitate to meet the sea. The great exchange of the world's waters is disrupted. Scientists gather data but find no comfort in it. Charts show strange irregularities, tides rising unpredictably, with no clear cycle to follow. Ocean currents that once depended on tidal drag shift direction, changing weather far inland. Monsoons weaken or arrive out of season, storms lose their timing. The absence of lunar tides ripples not just across the sea, but into every drop of rain that falls. The whole planet listens to a new, offbeat rhythm. The night ocean, once a shimmering expanse of silver reflection, now lies in deep shadow. Without the moon's glow, its surface swallows light rather than returning it. Sailors who once navigated by its shine find themselves adrift, their compasses useless against shifting currents. The water seems darker, heavier, as though mourning its missing companion. Even the stars above seem to tremble when reflected in such stillness. In this new world, the oceans begin to speak differently. Their waves, once steady and predictable, now crash without pattern. Sometimes, they roar with sudden violence, other times, they are eerily still for days. Scientists compare it to a body with an irregular heartbeat, the pulse of the sea out of sync with its soul. The moon had been its quiet conductor, holding chaos in harmony. Without it, the music turns wild and mournful. Along rocky shores, tide pools dry too soon. The delicate creatures that lived in them, starfish, anemones, tiny fish, vanish slowly, unable to adjust. What remains are shells and silence. The coasts become quieter, not with peace, but with absence. Children who once collected sea glass now find the beaches barren, the treasures buried under motionless sands. The horizon looks the same, yet it feels lonelier than ever before. In the deep sea, where sunlight never reaches, the loss is stranger still. The gravitational waves that once stirred the abyssal plains no longer flow. Sediment settles too quickly, cutting off oxygen in ancient ecosystems. Gigantic jellyfish drift aimlessly, their bioluminescence dimming with each passing cycle. The ocean floor, usually in gentle flux, grows stagnant. Life slows, and the darkness deepens in ways no instrument can measure. Over time, coastlines redraw themselves. Harbors become shallows, islands connect to mainland, and some peninsulas sink under strange, unending tides. Humanity watches maps become obsolete. Entire towns relocate further inland as the sea forgets when to retreat. The rhythm of daily life changes too, the calendar of fishermen, farmers, and sailors no longer guided by the rise and fall of the tide. The moon's memory fades from routine. But nature, ever resilient, begins to adapt. Certain fish learn to spawn with the sun's cycle instead, guided by its weaker pull. Kelp forests, once swaying in lunar rhythm, find a new pattern in the whisper of winds and currents. Slowly, a fragile order begins to emerge from the chaos. The sea, though wounded, does not surrender. It listens, it experiments, it evolves, a vast consciousness relearning how to breathe without its ancient partner. Yet something spiritual remains broken. For as long as humanity has existed, the moon and the tides have danced together, writing poetry in waves and whispers. Without that bond, the sea loses its voice. The songs of sailors, the myths of sea goddesses, the romantic rhythm of moonlit shores all dissolve into history. People still walk along beaches at night, but the silence between waves feels wider now, echoing with absence. Oceanographers record a new phenomenon, strange, standing waves forming in places never seen before. Some believe they are remnants of the old rhythm, echoes of tides still trying to move as they once did. It's as if the ocean remembers, even as physics insists it cannot. These ghost tides rise without cause, shimmer faintly under starlight, then vanish before dawn. They are memory given shape, the ocean dreaming of its lost moon. As centuries pass, the Earth's rotation subtly shifts again. Without the tidal friction caused by lunar gravity, the planet spins slightly faster. Days shorten by fractions of seconds, imperceptible to most, yet deeply symbolic. The moon once slowed the Earth with its gentle drag, keeping time steady and kind. Now, the planet moves on without restraint. Like a heart beating too fast in grief. The oceans follow, restless but leaderless. Life along the coastlines begins to change form entirely. Creatures evolve to handle still waters, new species of crabs that bury deeper, fish that spawn in constant conditions, plants that no longer depend on floods. Humanity, too, adjusts. Cities grow further inland, ports move, and technologies emerge to simulate tides for aquaculture and water renewal. Artificial tides, a phrase once absurd, becomes a necessity for survival. Still, no machine can replicate the elegance of lunar touch. Artificial waves feel mechanical, predictable. The true tides had been alive, breathing with the pull of something greater than Earth itself. Without them, the ocean feels domesticated, tamed, but never whole. It's as if humanity has built a clock that ticks perfectly, but without a heartbeat beneath it. Function remains, but soul has drifted away. On nights when the stars burn especially bright, some say they can still hear the whisper of tides, faintly lapping at forgotten frequencies. Old sailors insist that if you listen closely, the ocean still hums the moon's name in its sleep. Perhaps the sea, like memory, never truly forgets. Perhaps in its vastness, it keeps a hidden rhythm not of motion, but of longing, echoing through every molecule of salt and water. Then, one night, an unexpected surge arrives. Waves rise higher than they have in decades, then fall back into perfect calm. It is brief, impossible, but undeniable. Scientists rush to measure it, yet no explanation fits. Some call it coincidence, others cosmic interference. But the few who stand barefoot at the shore that night say it felt like the ocean sighing, not in pain, but in remembrance. For a moment, the sea remembers how to breathe. And so, even without its lunar guide, the ocean endures, slower, stranger, yet alive. It learns new ways to move, to listen, to exist. The tides may never return to their old rhythm, but the memory of motion remains within every wave. The Earth, once led by the moon's hand, now walks alone. Yet in that solitude, it finds a quiet grace, a lesson written not in tides or light, but in endurance itself. The coasts, once places of rhythm and certainty, now exist in a state of quiet confusion. The moon's absence has rewritten the boundaries between sea and land, leaving the old patterns of flooding and retreat behind. What was once a living pulse of tides has become a slow, uncertain drift. Yet, life, stubborn, creative, patient, begins its long process of rebalancing. Evolution doesn't mourn, it listens. And slowly, the coastal world learns to breathe again. The first survivors are the smallest ones, the algae and microbial mats clinging to stones. Deprived of predictable tides, they spread wider, seeking moisture in every crack and crevice. Their resilience becomes the foundation of the new shore. They learn to store water within themselves, growing thicker, darker, richer. These humble pioneers begin the story of adaptation, rewriting the script of survival where chaos now reigns. The sea, though lost in rhythm, still nurtures invention. Barnacles, creatures that once timed their feeding to the waves, now adjust their instincts. Instead of opening and closing with the flow, they learn to sense humidity and temperature. They feed when the air is heavy and still, resting when the winds dry the coast. Over generations, their shells grow tougher, sealing moisture within. They become tiny fortresses of endurance, monuments to persistence in an unpredictable world. The intertidal zone shifts its heartbeat to a slower, steadier rhythm. Crabs, long the masters of the shifting sands, struggle at first. Their burrows collapse as the soil dries for too long. But evolution whispers subtle changes. Some develop stronger legs for digging deeper, others broader claws for carrying moisture from rock pools to their dens. The crabs begin to live half within and half beyond the sea, creatures of twilight, neither of tide nor of land entirely. Their behavior becomes an echo of what the moon once dictated, remembered in instinct. As centuries stretch onward, the coastline hardens. Salt crusts form where waves once cleansed the earth daily. Yet, from these crystalline wounds, new ecosystems bloom. Mosses grow in the cracks of old coral. Succulent plants creep close to the edge, their leaves thick with stored water. Where there was once fluidity, there is now endurance. The border between ocean and land is less a place of change, more a place of stillness, but within that stillness, life finds its voice. Fish species that once relied on tidal estuaries begin to change, too. They evolve to tolerate wider ranges of salinity, surviving in waters that stay stagnant for weeks. Some learn to burrow into wet sand, waiting out the long pauses between floods. Others migrate permanently inland or deeper into the sea. Over generations, new species emerge. Slow swimmers with lungs as well as gills, able to crawl short distances over mud and stone. The first explorers of the new shores. The mangroves, those guardians of coasts, face an uncertain fate. Their roots, accustomed to daily tides, now thirst for motion. Many die back, but the survivors send roots deeper, reaching toward unseen aquifers. In time, they transform. Their canopies shrink but thicken, their roots twist in tighter knots. The new mangroves are smaller, harder, more compact trees that remember motion in their silence. They become sentinels of patience, green monuments to adaptation. Humanity, too, must learn new rhythms. Fishing communities once bound to tides find their calendars meaningless. Instead, they begin to follow wind and temperature. They map new patterns, discovering that coastal currents still move faintly with the pull of the sun. It's weaker, inconsistent, but enough. They build floating markers, wind clocks, and solar compasses. The new mariners navigate not by the moon, but by the whispers of the air. Tradition bends but does not break. In the absence of predictable tides, entire coastlines reshape their economies. What was once a rhythm of harvesting, waiting, and returning becomes a study of observation and patience. Oyster farms move deeper, where conditions remain stable. Salt makers shift to controlled evaporation. Children grow up hearing stories of tides that once sang with precision, and though they never see it, they carry the myth as a form of reverence, the old world remembered through stories of motion. Far below the surface, in the shadowed reefs, the coral kingdoms face a silent crisis. Without tidal flushing, The water grows stagnant, heavy with sediment and heat. Many reefs suffocate. But nature does not surrender easily. Some corals develop symbiotic relationships with new algae, ones that thrive in still water. They glow differently now, softer, greenish, muted. The reefs that remain become quieter but more self-sufficient, microcosms of adaptation in suspended motion. Along the new coasts, amphibious creatures thrive. Frogs, lizards, and small mammals learn to live between the salty and the fresh. Some develop salt glands to survive brackish pools. Their calls echo across the silence where waves once thundered. In their small, resilient bodies lies the blueprint of the future, creatures unafraid of uncertainty, thriving in transition. The intertidal world becomes less about motion, more about endurance. Stillness becomes the new rhythm of life. The human imagination, ever restless, begins to romanticize the past. Artists paint moons over still seas, their canvases filled with light that no longer exists. Poets describe tides as living spirits lost to time. And yet, in these memories, a strange comfort grows. Humanity begins to see itself not as the victim of cosmic change, but as part of the continuum of adaptation. The sea may have fallen silent, but in that silence, reflection deepens. As generations pass, technology steps in to mimic what nature once provided. Artificial tidal systems are built to oxygenate bays, powered by geothermal and solar currents. These mechanical tides hum gently, rising and falling in careful patterns, keeping the coasts alive. They are not the moon's tides, they lack the poetry, the unpredictability, but they sustain life. Humanity, in its ingenuity, becomes the new conductor of the sea's slow music. Yet, not everything can be restored. Certain species vanish forever, delicate shellfish, ancient plankton, and bioluminescent creatures that glowed in lunar alignment. Their extinction is mourned not with tears but with gratitude for what they taught about beauty and impermanence. The new world carries their memory in silence. The beaches shimmer less, but they endure. The ocean remains vast, even if its voice has changed. Strangely, the coastlines begin to glow in other ways. The still water allows minerals to settle and reflect starlight differently. Night seas now mirror the sky perfectly, creating illusions of infinity. Some call it the quiet ocean, others the mirror world. Without the moon, the boundary between above and below blurs. Stars seem to sink into the sea, and in that illusion, people find something sacred, a balance not of movement, but of reflection. Communities adapt culturally as well. Festivals once tied to full moons shift to solstices and equinoxes. Songs that once followed the tide's return now follow the wind's change. Humanity builds new myths for a new sky. The moon becomes not a current presence but an ancient spirit, symbolizing memory and transformation. Children grow up with stories of how the earth once danced to another's pull and how, in losing it, life found its own rhythm. New ecosystems thrive where old ones perished. The intertidal flats become permanent wetlands, home to a rich diversity of insects, amphibians, and resilient flora. Migratory birds find new feeding grounds, adapting to the fixed shorelines. What once was chaos becomes a new kind of harmony, slower, quieter, but sustainable. The world, through patience, finds its footing again. The absence of rhythm gives rise to a deeper stillness, a stability born from surrender. As centuries fold into millennia, the memory of tides becomes legend. Yet, the DNA of every coastal creature carries it, a faint rhythm buried in genetic code. Scientists discover microbehaviors, like microscopic pulsations in algae or nocturnal stirrings in fish, that seem to echo the old lunar rhythm. Though the moon is gone, life remembers. The body of Earth has learned to hold its memory within itself, like a heartbeat waiting for a long-lost song. Somewhere in the depths, geothermal vents give rise to new species. Without the moon's interference, tectonic stability allows life to flourish in ways unseen before. Vast underwater meadows spread across the continental shelves, rich with glowing kelp and new coral. The sea, now still on the surface, teems below with quiet abundance. The world above sees silence, the world beneath hums with rebirth. On land, humanity grows contemplative. The absence of tides changes not only geography but psyche. People speak of patience, of surrender, of gentleness, lessons learned from watching the earth recover without guidance. In schools, children are taught not just the science of adaptation, but the philosophy of balance. They learn that life does not resist change, it transforms through it. The moon's loss becomes Earth's quiet enlightenment. Over endless time, the coasts grow lush again. Forests stretch to the new shores, their roots drinking from stable seas. The air grows thick with the scent of salt and growth. The line between land and ocean becomes more of a gradient than a border. This is not the old world restored, but a new one reimagined, softer, slower, wiser. Evolution, once tied to rhythm, now follows stillness as its teacher. And perhaps, in the hush of twilight, when stars tremble on the horizon and the air is perfectly still, the sea still dreams. Maybe it remembers the tug of the moon not as grief, but as a kind of love. For love, too, is a force of pull and release. And though the tide no longer moves, the memory of that pull endures in every drop of water, every grain of sand. The world has changed, but the longing remains eternal, patient, beautiful. When the moon fades from the sky, the creatures of the night find themselves adrift in a darkness deeper than they have ever known. The gentle glow that once guided the moth, the owl, and the sea turtle is no longer there to steady their instincts. Wings beat uncertainly in the air, paws press softly on unfamiliar ground, and the ocean's glimmering surface reflects only starlight, too faint to show the way home. The night becomes vast, unanchored, and all who once relied on the moon's tender watch begin to move differently, hesitatingly, through the new unlit world. Owls that once flew with calm precision now move through the night like uncertain shadows, their wide eyes searching for patterns of light that no longer exist. Their prey, mice, frogs, and beetles, find a strange balance in the absence of that silver eye above. Where once there was a rhythm of fear and flight, now there is an odd stillness. The forests breathe differently, the underbrush remains quieter longer, and the sounds of night stretch thinner across the land. Even the predators seem reluctant to claim the dark for their own. Sea turtles, ancient navigators born with the map of the moon in their hearts, struggle most of all. When hatchlings emerge from their nests, they used to crawl toward the shimmering reflection of the moon upon the sea. Now, under a sky without its pale lamp, they turn the wrong way, toward the faint lights of distant human settlements, toward dunes, or trees or shadows where no safety lies. 1,000 tiny lives falter, lost between instinct and the missing glow that once guided generations unbroken. Across the deserts, the silence deepens. The sand no longer shines silver, and nocturnal foxes and beetles lose their quiet cues for when to hunt, when to hide. The cold becomes sharper, the distances greater, for the moon's light had once softened the contours of the world, giving shape even to emptiness. Now, only the stars flicker weakly above them, distant and unhelpful, their light taking years to arrive, their pattern unchanged yet suddenly foreign. Bats, too, find confusion. Though their senses depend on echoes rather than light, the moon's cycles had told them when to feast and when to rest. The night sky once glimmered with subtle cues, reflections, rhythms, shifts in temperature and sound that the moon stirred with its presence. Without it, their migrations waver. They swarm in strange clusters, fly longer in circles, as if waiting for a signal that never comes. In the savannas, nocturnal birds that once sang in harmony with the moon's rise now hesitate to call at all. The lions who hunted under its glow prowl uneasily, their eyes catching only starlight and their steps cautious in the deeper black. The moon had painted their world with quiet silver, marking shadows and giving depth to their domain. Now, the plains flatten into an indistinct dark, a world without edges, where sound, scent, and instinct alone must take command. The oceans grow stranger still. Fish that rose to the surface under moonlight no longer follow their ancient dance. The shimmering tide pools at the edge of reefs become darker realms, their life pulsing without pattern. Creatures that once hid during bright lunar nights and emerged when it waned can no longer sense their rhythm. They drift out of sync with the currents, their bodies confused, their reproduction cycles slipping. The balance of timing, a delicate thread held for millions of years, begins to unravel. Even insects feel the loss. Moths that once spiraled upward toward the moon now spin aimlessly through the dark. Fireflies blink alone, their lights reflecting off no soft lunar glow. For them, the moon was not just guidance, it was part of a silent dialogue between the world and its watchers. Its absence breaks that quiet conversation, leaving only scattered signals across the night. The forests hum differently. No longer silver-washed, they stand under a sky so deep that the canopy seems to vanish into eternity. The creatures that once trusted the moon's arrival as the marker of time lose their rhythm. Some emerge too early, some too late. The predators find hunger waiting where there once was plenty, and the prey no longer feel the familiar safety of knowing when to move. Every rustle becomes uncertain. Even humans, watching the new night, feel the unease. For countless millennia, travelers and dreamers had used the moon to guide them through darkness. Now, the stars alone remain, but they are far, their patterns harder to trace. The night feels larger, heavier. Campfires burn longer, as if to replace the missing comfort of that gentle celestial companion. Yet no flame can replicate the cool steadiness of moonlight. Migratory birds lose their cues too. Many had flown by the glow of the moon reflected off the waves or the desert sands. Without it, their paths falter. Some arrive too soon in lands unready for them, others too late when food has vanished. The airways of Earth, once harmonized with the moon's gentle metronome, now fill with missteps. The balance between earth, air, and instinct stretches thin, trembles, and begins to fray. In the far north, wolves lift their heads to an empty sky. Their howls, once answered by the echo of moonlight, now meet only darkness. Their voices stretch longer, more mournful. The sound carries farther, unrestrained by the silver boundaries that once softened the night. For them, the moon had been more than light, it was witness. Without it, their calls feel unanswered, their stories untold. The coral reefs shimmer with faint confusion. Many species had synchronized their spawning to the phases of the moon, releasing eggs and sperm in great glowing clouds under its watch. Without that celestial clock, their timing falters. Too soon, and the sea washes their life away. Too late, and the currents miss them. The rhythm of creation stumbles, and the once predictable beauty of the reef's renewal fades into chaos. Foxes in the countryside move more cautiously now. Where once the moon's glow offered just enough visibility to chase a rabbit or cross a field, now the darkness forces them to linger longer in the hedgerows. The nights grow longer, the hunts shorter, and hunger whispers louder. The ecosystem reshapes itself slowly, each creature's adaptation a response to absence, not presence. Deep-sea creatures, though far from moonlight, still feel its loss. The lunar pull shaped the tides that carried nutrients, stirred the ocean's surface, and set cycles that echoed even in the abyss. Now, the great waters settle differently. The timing of deep migrations shifts, and the quiet language of the deep grows uncertain. The moon's absence, even from afar, touches all that lives. The human heart, too, stirs strangely. Lovers who once met beneath its glow find the stars too cold, too distant to replace it. Poets who wrote by its light find their metaphors dimmed. The moon had been a companion to emotion, an emblem of reflection and change. Without it, the night's poetry loses its cadence, becoming still, introspective, and faintly hollow. Farmers, once attuned to lunar cycles, notice their crops responding differently. Certain plants that bloomed according to the moon's gentle pull begin to shift in pattern. The calendar loses an ancient layer of meaning. Festivals that once celebrated the full moon become relics of a forgotten rhythm. The connection between human life and celestial time fades quietly, thread by thread. The mountains seem sharper, darker now. Where once snow caught the faint light and glimmered gently through the hours, it now swallows the dark. The world feels heavier without that touch of silver, as if even the rocks themselves have lost a reflection of their own spirit. The peaks become silhouettes, harder, lonelier beneath the unbroken black sky. Insects that flew in swarms toward the moon now disperse chaotically. The ecosystems that relied on their movements, bats, birds, even flowers that opened by night, begin to lose sync. Pollination slows, and the night's hum weakens. The silence becomes thicker, as if the air itself is holding its breath in confusion. And still, the stars watch quietly. They have always been there, patient and eternal, but their brilliance had once been softened by the moon's glow. Now, they seem sharper, more distant, like countless eyes observing a planet learning to walk through a darker dream. Their constancy offers little comfort, for they are too far to fill the void. Time itself begins to feel different. The waxing and waning of the moon had given rhythm to months, to moods, to tides of thought. Without it, the world's sense of cycle becomes strange, continuous yet fractured. Nights blur into one another. Creatures lose the subtle cues that once united them beneath the same glow. And so, in this new moonless world, the night is not simply darker, it is quieter, slower, and more uncertain. The creatures that once danced to lunar rhythm now drift in disarray. The planet itself feels just a little emptier, as if one of its oldest friends has gone silent, leaving behind only the memory of silver light that once softened every shadow. When the moon vanished and the tides softened, the world's edges began to quiet in ways most could not see but every small creature could feel. The great rhythmic heartbeat of the ocean, once ruled by the lunar pull, slowed into irregular sighs. Along every coastline, from coral-laced lagoons to the stony shores of the north, the shallow pools that formed and retreated with the moon's cycle began to fade. They lingered less often, refilled less deeply, and soon many were gone altogether, silent reminders of how much life had once depended on the subtle dance between sea and sky. These tidal pools were tiny worlds, entire ecosystems that thrived in miniature crabs, sea stars, snails, anemones, algae, and fish, all weaving their lives between moments of water and air. With no moon to tug the tides, their daily renewal ceased. Pools that once brimmed with oxygen-rich water became still and stale, trapped beneath the weight of their own quiet. The creatures within began to dwindle, their generations unable to adjust quickly enough. The balance that had endured for millennia dissolved as predictability gave way to stillness. Some coastlines began to change shape entirely. Without the strong tidal sweeps, sediment no longer shifted in familiar rhythms. Sand settled differently, covering the low crevices that once held life. The waves still reached the shore, but their energy was gentler, less frequent, and less cleansing. Seaweed clung too long in place, collecting silt, and the air above the beaches grew heavier with the scent of stillness rather than motion. The living edges of the sea began to lose their pulse. In the past, those shallow basins had served as nurseries for countless species. Small fish once darted between the safety of stones while learning the currents, and juvenile crabs waited there for the protection of the returning tide. Now, without reliable cycles, their young no longer found the rhythm they were born to follow. The timing of breeding seasons fractured. Life at the margins, once synchronized with the moon's rise and fall, grew uncertain and slow. Even the seabirds noticed. They came less often to peck at exposed mollusks or skim tiny fish from evaporating pools. The predictable feast of low tide no longer arrived, and so they flew farther, seeking sustenance elsewhere. Entire flocks changed their patterns, abandoning coastlines that had sustained them for ages. Their absence left the shores strangely empty, the soundscape of the sea flattened without their cries echoing between waves. The microalgae that coated the stones lost their cycles too. Their growth had once been balanced by the waxing and waning of the tides, bathed in sunlight one day, refreshed by seawater the next. Now, some dried under the sun's relentless gaze, while others drowned in water that no longer withdrew. The shimmering green film that once marked the breath of the intertidal world dimmed into a dull brown crust. Even at a scale invisible to most eyes, the loss of the moon left a shadow. Starfish wandered less, their slow arms stretching across surfaces that no longer renewed with fresh salt water. Many became stranded in stagnant shallows, the water around them too warm and oxygen poor to sustain their ancient grace. Their slow decline echoed through the ecosystems they once balanced. Prey populations grew unchecked, and the delicate chain of survival unraveled, strand by strand. In tide pools that remained, a strange stillness took root. The gentle pulse of water, once a breathing motion, stilled into long, stagnant pauses. Sea anemones stayed closed more often, their bright tentacles curling inward, waiting for currents that never came. The rhythm of life slowed so deeply that time itself seemed to linger between moments. The shorelines no longer whispered, they only watched. Coral reefs close to shore began to lose their shimmering edges too. Without the tidal refresh, debris collected among their branching forms. The water grew warmer and less dynamic. Many corals bleached not from heat alone, but from the lack of flow, their tissues suffocating slowly, starved of the nutrients that tides once delivered faithfully. What had been gardens of light dimmed into stone-grey silence. Mussels and barnacles, those steadfast anchors of the coast, began to die in greater numbers. Their strength had always been matched to the rhythm of the waves. They opened and closed in harmony with the tide, feeding, resting, and surviving by its constancy. Without that reliable motion, they stayed sealed too long, missing the moments when food might pass. The coastlines that had once glittered with their shells grew bare, their songs of clicking shells gone quiet. The absence of tides reshaped more than habitat, it altered time itself for the creatures who lived by it. Many species had built their internal clocks around the lunar rhythm. Without it, their sense of when to feed, migrate, or reproduce began to drift. Some adapted by sinking to the sun, others simply faded, their lives out of step with the planet's remaining cues. Evolution, slow and patient, had no time to rewrite what had taken millions of years to compose. And in places where tidal pools once reflected the moon's glow, now only starlight shimmered on still surfaces. The magic that once linked the heavens to the shallow edges of the earth dissolved. The poetic connection between sky and sea, one pulling, one yielding, broke apart quietly. The pools no longer told stories of the moon's journey, they simply mirrored absence. Children who grew up near these shores would never know the quiet joy of watching the tide retreat to reveal tiny worlds teeming with color and motion. The small wonders that had once sparked curiosity, the dart of a crab, the waving of a small anemone, became rarities, stories told by elders who remembered a time when the sea breathed in and out with grace. The connection between people and the sea's rhythm weakened, replaced by a quieter, more distant appreciation. Salt marshes began to dry differently too. Without regular tidal floods, they shrank, their grasses withering at the edges. Birds that once nested there found fewer safe spots. The soft transition between land and sea, once a breathing gradient, hardened into an uncertain border. Ecosystems that depended on the moon's gentle reach became fragmented, their songs interrupted by stillness. In this new equilibrium, new creatures began to appear. Hardy species, those able to endure stagnant water or unpredictable conditions, slowly took over. Algae that could tolerate stillness thrived, spreading thick mats across once clear pools. Mosquitoes found breeding grounds where there had once been flowing tides. The balance of beauty shifted toward resilience over elegance. The coastline itself began to lose its fragrance. The scent of brine and living salt, born from the daily renewal of seawater, dulled into something muted. Without the tide's movement, decay lingered longer, trapped beneath still water or drying too slowly on the stones. The air felt heavier, less alive. Even from far inland, the ocean's once fresh breath seemed tired. Crabs, those tireless workers of the shore, lost much of their rhythm. They had once timed their foraging with the retreating water, emerging confidently to hunt and burrow. Now, they wandered unpredictably, often caught by sudden surges or trapped by waters that didn't withdraw. Many perished in confusion, their once perfect instinct now betrayed by a world that no longer kept its promises. Over time, the physical shape of coastlines began to harden. With less motion to grind and sculpt rock, cliffs and stones stayed sharper, pools fewer. The intricate details, the crevices where barnacles nested, the basins where small fish hid, faded. The coastline became smoother but emptier, its beauty simpler, stripped of the living textures once formed by the moon's hand. Inland, rivers that fed into the sea felt the change too. With tides no longer pushing back against their flow, deltas shifted. Salt water no longer reached as far, altering the chemistry of countless habitats. Plants that had once thrived in brackish balance withered, and freshwater species crept closer to the coast. The delicate mixing place between river and ocean lost its identity. Even the sound changed. The whispering of waves meeting the land softened, replaced by long pauses of silence. The familiar music of ebb and flow, which had once lulled countless beings into calm, vanished. The sea became quieter, heavier. Its song, one humanity had always known, even before it understood, was gone. In some places, the new stillness bred a strange beauty. The water's surface, untouched by the usual pull and churn, became mirror-smooth. The stars reflected perfectly in it, creating illusions of infinite sky. But this beauty carried melancholy, the perfection of something unmoving, lifeless, serene only because it no longer breathes. Marine scientists, those who studied what remained, began to notice how deeply the moon had once connected every aspect of life. Its absence was not only tidal but spiritual. The web of relationships that tied oceanic cycles to celestial timing unraveled slowly, revealing how much of Earth's harmony had depended on that quiet, faithful tug. Generations later, stories remained of a time when children could find life between the rocks, when the moon would draw the sea like breath. Some still walked the beaches, tracing the ghost lines where tides had once reached. They looked upon the motionless pools and imagined what it had been like when the Earth itself seemed to inhale and exhale beneath a silver moon. And though new life eventually filled the void, creatures that needed no rhythm but their own, the memory of the tidal world persisted in the planet's bones. The rocks still bore smoothness from a vanished pulse, the sand still whispered faintly of a pull that had once shaped all things. In silence, the world remembered. For the moon may have gone, but its imprint endured, not as light, but as longing, a gentle ache in every still pool, every quiet shore, every creature that once waited faithfully for the sea to return. When the moon was gone, the Earth's dance began to change in ways too slow for a single lifetime to see, yet vast enough to reshape the heartbeat of the planet. The moon had always been a quiet hand upon the Earth's shoulder, steadying its spin, calming its wobble, keeping time with a tenderness invisible but immense. Without that hand, the spin began to shift, subtly at first, a whisper of freedom, then gradually, an unraveling of rhythm that had once been constant for billions of years. In the beginning, no one noticed. A day was still a day, the sunrise still came. But deep within the planet's core, the balance began to slide. The moon's gravitational pull had always acted like an anchor, slowing Earth's rotation over eons. Without it, that friction eased. The planet began to spin a little faster, just a breath each century, yet enough to change the length of a day. The difference was imperceptible to human senses but written across the quiet turning of ages. As centuries folded into millennia, the day shortened. What had once been 24 hours slipped toward 23, then 22. Time itself seemed to contract, though no clock could measure it until long after. Seasons began to tighten their loops, the pace of the planet's rhythm picking up in imperceptible waves. The Earth was not rushing, it was simply lighter now, less tethered, moving freely through the vastness of space. The loss of the moon's stabilizing pull also freed the planet's tilt to wander. It no longer held steady at the familiar angle that shaped the rhythm of seasons. The wobble grew wider over ages, causing climates to swing more drastically. Poles leaned further, then eased back, bringing alternating ages of heat and frost. The Earth's balance, once a gentle sway, became a slow, unpredictable roll, shifting the map of habitability again and again. Over deep time, this unsteadiness shaped evolution itself. Species adapted not just to climate but to the erratic patterns of light and dark that changed as the planet's tilt wavered. Forests crept north, then retreated, deserts bloomed, then vanished under new rains. Every few thousand years, life found itself recalibrating to a new geometry of sunlight. The rhythm of Earth, once guided by the moon, had become improvisation, still beautiful, but less sure of its steps. Civilizations rose and fell within the long pulse of this change, rarely understanding its source. Some saw the shortening days as mythic signs of divine restlessness or cosmic imbalance. Others recorded in quiet fascination that shadows changed just slightly faster than before. Astronomers traced stars and noticed the shifting angles, their instruments whispering of a slow cosmic drift that human minds could only half comprehend. The tides, already weakened by the moon's absence, contributed less friction to Earth's spin. The ocean's drag, once a stabilizing force, had been a subtle break that kept time slow and steady. Now, with shallower tides and fewer currents to resist rotation, the planet's spin increased more freely. The seas themselves began to circulate differently, their great gyres adjusting to the new energy of a faster-turning world. In this new age, the stars above seemed to drift quicker across the night sky. The constellations moved with slightly more haste, as if time itself had grown eager. The sky became both familiar and strange, its motion altered in ways that storytellers tried to preserve through myth. They spoke of the swift night, the short sun, and the hurrying stars, weaving poetry to explain a change written not in moments but in epochs. The faster spin had other consequences too. Winds strengthened subtly as the planet's rotation influenced atmospheric flow. Jet streams shifted. Storms grew narrower, faster, and more intense. The balance between calm and chaos altered just enough to matter. Over time, these winds sculpted new deserts and carved fresh dunes along ancient coasts, painting evidence of the moon's absence across the skin of the earth. Rivers adjusted their courses too, their flow patterns subtly reshaped by shifting weather systems. Rain came and went in unfamiliar cycles, bringing years of plenty and then long, sharp droughts. The equilibrium between land and sky felt restless, as if the earth, without its lunar companion, had forgotten how to breathe evenly. The pulse of the planet became syncopated, a rhythm both beautiful and unpredictable. Plants evolved differently in this brisker rhythm. Certain species adapted to slightly shorter days, blooming earlier, completing their cycles in faster rotations of sunlight. Others could not adjust and faded slowly from the record. Time itself had become an evolutionary pressure, carving new possibilities while erasing old certainties. Even in the stillest forests, leaves seemed to tremble under an unseen tempo. The poles suffered the most from the planet's new wonder. Sometimes, the tilt drew them into endless day for far longer than before. Other times, it left them shrouded in cold shadow. Ice grew thicker, then melted rapidly, never finding equilibrium. Glacial cycles became sharper and shorter, carving the land more deeply in less time. The fingerprints of each brief ice age etched themselves across continents like hurried brushstrokes. Human calendars struggled to keep up with the slow drift. Ancient patterns of solstice and equinox no longer aligned with the markers once used to measure them. In time, new systems arose, calendars based on observation rather than tradition, adjusting to the faster spin and erratic tilt. The concept of a day remained, but its meaning changed. It was no longer a fixed truth, only a convenience agreed upon by those who measured the sky. In deep geological time, the continents themselves felt the shift. Tectonic plates responded to subtle redistributions of energy within the mantle. The altered spin affected how molten layers circulated beneath the crust. Volcanoes erupted in new places, mountain ranges lifted differently, fault lines that had lain quiet stirred once more. The moon's quiet absence rippled even through stone. Without the moon's gentle tug, the night sky itself changed character. The stars appeared more steady to the naked eye, for the small wobbles in Earth's orientation that once brought parallax now moved irregularly. Astronomers of the far future looked up and saw constellations drift unpredictably, their alignments shifting on timescales once unthinkable. The heavens no longer felt anchored to memory. Across millions of years, the length of a day continued to shorten. Life evolved to fit the faster rhythm, creatures with quicker metabolisms, plants that could photosynthesize efficiently in shorter sunlight spans, predators whose instincts timed to a brisker twilight. Evolution's great clock began ticking faster. Yet amid this acceleration, the deep calm of Earth's rotation, its old, lunar-guided serenity, was gone. Geologists reading ancient rocks saw the record clearly. Layers of sediment once patterned by tides and lunar cycles ended abruptly. From that point onward, the spacing changed. Fossil growth rings, coral formations, and chemical traces in stone all told the same story. The Earth had lost its lunar metronome. Its tempo had quickened, and the change was written in every fossilized rhythm. In distant epochs, as continents reassembled into new configurations, the increased spin caused subtle bulging at the equator. The Earth's shape itself shifted slightly, becoming more oblate. Gravity varied a little from pole to pole. Oceans pooled wider across the mid-latitudes, and new equatorial seas formed, glimmering under faster days and nights. The world grew rounder in motion, but less balanced in mood. Civilizations that survived into these far ages adapted their lives to shorter days. Energy systems, agriculture, and rest cycles evolved accordingly. Artificial lighting filled the gaps where nature's rhythm could no longer sustain comfort. Humanity, ever resourceful, adjusted without truly grasping that they were living through the echoes of a loss older than memory, the slow spinning grief of a planet unmoored. Some thinkers and poets still pondered the connection between the lost moon and the restless world. They spoke of the moon as a missing twin, the companion whose absence made Earth restless. Artworks and myths emerged about the vanished silver guardian who once steadied the world's sleep. Even without direct evidence, something deep in the collective memory held on to the feeling that the night sky was not as it should be. The oceans, now driven mostly by the sun and the planet's rotation, found new patterns of movement. Great gyres expanded, moving heat differently across the globe. Marine life followed these new flows, adapting in waves of evolution that redrew ecosystems. The sea remained alive, but its dance was rougher, more hurried, a reflection of the Earth's faster turn beneath it. Over billions of years, the faster rotation may have begun to slow again, but never to the steadiness that once was. The process of balance, once aided by the moon's gentle friction, now relied only on the planet's own resistance and the drag of its atmosphere. The Earth became a self-contained rhythm, unanchored, playing its own tune in the silence of space. Even as the world changed beyond recognition, traces of the moon's influence remained. Ancient craters, fossilized tidal flats, and the memories of once regular seasons told of a time when a luminous companion kept the world's time. The echo of that lost harmony lingered in every spinning molecule, a cosmic nostalgia written into the very rotation of the globe. In the farthest future, when days have shortened further and the stars themselves drift into unfamiliar constellations, the Earth will still turn. It will spin with the momentum of its own history, faster than before, lighter, lonelier. And though no creature may remain to measure its rotation or mark its seasons, the planet's motion will carry, forever, the memory of a time when it spun in quiet conversation with the moon. Time, once guided by that celestial partnership, will continue its onward flow, but differently, less tempered, less patient. The Earth will never again feel that soft resistance, that nightly touch that steadied its dreams. The loss of the moon will be written not only in light and tide, but in the very heartbeat of the planet, a faster, freer, lonelier rhythm echoing across deep ages. The Earth's tilt, once a gift of balance between warmth and chill, begins to wander without the moon's steadying hand. Its gentle 23.5 degrees, the quiet pivot that paints seasons across time, starts to waver like a candle flame in a faint breeze. Over thousands of years, the axis begins to lean and straighten in unpredictable rhythms, no longer anchored by the lunar companion that once held its posture firm. Winters stretch colder, summers flare hotter, and the boundary between them grows less certain. The tilt's slow dance becomes chaotic, turning climates into restless wanderers. Forests that once thrived under steady patterns now face confusion, plants sprout too early or too late, animals migrate in circles chasing vanished cues. The Earth feels like a body without balance, a sleepwalker without the soft guidance of its lunar light. Even humans, should they endure these long ages, would notice subtle changes in the stars above, their maps of navigation slowly betraying them. Over centuries, ice begins to claim lands it once spared, then retreats without warning. Deserts bloom for brief decades, only to fade again into dust. The absence of the moon's stabilizing pull allows the planet to tip just a little further than before, and that little becomes a vast consequence. The Earth's rhythm, the one that once pulsed to the moon's silent metronome, now beats to an erratic tune. The poles, once reliable as anchors of frost, begin their wandering. Sometimes, the northern reaches lean closer to the sun, melting age-old ice and flooding the lowlands. At other times, the opposite happens, and snow grips continents once warm and green. The moon's quiet restraint is gone, and the tilt behaves like a pendulum that's lost its center. Each swing changes what life can endure. In these vast ages of drift, evolution becomes improvisation. Life must adapt not in millennia, but in centuries. Species that once thrived in predictable cycles must now chase climate's uncertain whispers. Some find new homes in unexpected places, others vanish, unable to keep pace with the planet's tilting moods. The Earth becomes a world of constant adjustment, a breathing sphere always slightly off balance. Where once the moon's gravitational embrace created a kind of lullaby for planetary motion, now there is only quiet inconsistency. The sun alone cannot soothe the shifting tilt, its warmth remains faithful, but the stage beneath it tilts and rolls. Shadows lengthen strangely in ancient deserts, light strikes differently upon the oceans, and time itself feels bent. The constellations shift too, their patterns altering over ages as Earth's axis trembles. The North Star, once the steady mark of direction, drifts from its throne in the sky. Sailors of ancient seas would have called it betrayal, future travelers, if any, might call it mystery. The sky tells a story that never repeats, every age witnessing a new celestial map. Without the moon's grip, the tilt sometimes leans deeper toward the sun, granting Earth long ages of warmth, when jungles might reach into polar realms. But with equal possibility, it leans away, bringing ice across continents and trapping warmth beneath clouds of frost. These are not simple seasons, but epochs of change, too grand for one lifetime to notice, too vast for memory to hold. The beauty of balance becomes a fragile memory. The tilt once offered predictability, a sense that the world turned in harmony with itself. But now, harmony becomes improvisation. The Earth experiments with extremes, and in doing so, it learns new forms of existence, strange forests, glowing plankton under red suns, animals shaped by a planet that refuses to rest. Rivers run differently now. Their courses shaped not only by the pull of tides or rain but by glacial surges and sudden thaws. The moon once moderated these rhythms, keeping the water cycle steady through her silent orchestration of the tides. Without her, rainfall patterns swing wildly, and coasts swell or shrink with the whim of the climate. Human memory, if it survives, will fragment. Myths of balance and order will fade into legends of instability. Ancient calendars, once tied to lunar cycles, will feel hollow and meaningless. There will be no dependable clock in the heavens, no silver sphere marking months. Only the sun remains, its rise and fall indifferent to the chaos beneath. The tilt's drift also alters the light that touches the land. The angle of dawn and dusk stretches or contracts, sometimes gifting long twilights, other times stealing daylight in sudden brevity. These subtle changes influence every living thing, the way trees grow, how crops ripen, how migratory birds find their way. Eventually, life begins to find a strange new balance, not stability, but flexibility. Creatures evolve to thrive in unpredictability, learning to survive both frost and heat, drought and flood. The planet becomes a realm of adaptive brilliance, where endurance itself becomes the highest form of intelligence. And yet, beneath it all, a quiet longing persists in the Earth's motion, a missing pulse. The moon's absence is a silence felt not in sound but in the rhythm of rotation, the missing whisper that once said, "Be still." Without it, the Earth feels like a dancer turning without a partner, elegant yet unanchored. Continents creep and grind across this ever-shifting world, responding to forces both deep and subtle. The tilt's alteration even affects tectonic moods, influencing how ice loads and relieves the crust. Mountains rise slower, valleys deepen faster, and the ancient face of the planet redraws itself under invisible command. The seasons become unrecognizable. Some regions lose them entirely, living under endless mildness or eternal chill, while others experience violent oscillations, monsoons replaced by droughts, storms by stillness. The predictability of harvests, migrations, and births fades into a guessing game. In the long corridors of time, new civilizations, if they bloom, might chart this strange instability into their mythology. They'll speak of a time when the world was calmer, when night had a companion, and seasons followed a pattern. They'll look up at the empty sky and imagine the moon as a god that once kept order among chaos. Still, there is a strange grace in this new Earth. The dance of imbalance creates breathtaking vistas, auroras shimmering where none existed before, sunlight painting new hues across skies unshaped by lunar reflection. Life persists, and even thrives, in the uncertainty. The moon's absence has become not an end, but a transformation. The Earth's tilt, though erratic, creates diversity beyond imagination. Every age holds a new shape of world, some barren, some lush, all alive in their own way. Change becomes the planet's inheritance. Through this endless drift, The Earth learns resilience. The Moon once steadied it. Now, in solitude, it steadies itself. The axis wobbles, but never breaks. The seasons blur, but the cycle continues. And though the stars may shift and the climates may wander, the planet keeps spinning, carrying forward the memory of balance, even without the one who once held it still. The first signs of change are so delicate that no one notices them. The wind patterns that once obeyed ancient cycles begin to drift, whispering in new directions, bending slightly differently around mountain peaks. The absence of the Moon's gravitational pull doesn't change the air itself, but over ages, its missing tug on tides alters the oceans, and the oceans guide the skies. The rhythm between sea and sky becomes slightly out of tune, and weather learns a slower, stranger song. At first, the differences appear only in the smallest of places, a breeze arriving a little earlier, rain coming from a different horizon. But small shifts, when stretched across thousands of years, grow into grand transformations. Storm systems begin to wander in new paths, guided not by lunar tides but by the restless breathing of the planet itself. The balance that once held between heat and cold begins to flicker like a candle in moving air. The Earth's oceans, once obedient to the Moon's pull, no longer move in perfect rhythm. Their slow currents, the deep conveyor belts of life and warmth, begin to flow differently. Without lunar influence, the mixing of warm and cold waters weakens, and the climate begins to separate, the poles colder, the equator hotter. The world divides itself by temperature, like a slow parting of continents made of air. Over centuries, coastlines feel the first hints of their quiet change. The gentle washing of tides once carried away heat and salt, keeping the air mild. Now, without that constant motion, salt gathers, heat lingers, and the rhythm that smoothed the world's edges begins to fade. The sky mirrors this stillness. Clouds form less predictably, and rains arrive not by pattern, but by chance. The long ages bring deeper consequences. Forests begin to respond in subtle ways, trees flowering out of season, leaves thickening or thinning in strange intervals. Each species has learned its song from the Moon's steady background rhythm. Now, that rhythm is gone. Seasons stretch and shrink like an old clock missing a pendulum. What was once predictable becomes improvisation written in wind and soil. In some regions, gentle warmth takes root for ages, creating vast belts of humidity and greenery. In others, cold deepens, settling for millennia. The planet no longer holds to a single melody but explores endless variations, each unique to its time and place. Weather becomes less of a cycle and more of a story that never repeats. The skies grow less patient. The air above oceans thickens with heat that no tide pulls away. Storms begin to gather slower but stronger, brewing with a kind of ancient patience. When they come, they move unpredictably, guided only by their own making. Lightning dances where it never did before. Thunder becomes the Earth's reminder that its patterns are its own now. Snow, too, changes its rhythm. The great glacier breathe differently without lunar tides to help regulate their melt and freeze. Ice forms in strange shapes, layered in uneven histories. Some melt too soon, while others last centuries longer than expected. The balance between land and sea begins to feel uncertain, as though the planet itself is still learning to move without a partner. Across deserts, winds carve new shapes in sand. Without predictable tides to cool or warm nearby seas, the air over dry lands shifts more violently between day and night. Sandstorms grow taller, sharper, and sometimes quieter, as though listening for the missing pull that once gave them direction. The stars above them shine unchanged, but the earth beneath feels less anchored. The creatures who live under these skies adapt in silence. Birds alter their migrations, guided now by subtle shifts in sunlight rather than the glow of the moon. Insects hatch at strange times, rivers flood when no one expects them to. The patterns of life dissolve into something freer, though far more fragile. It is as though the world is exhaling a long-held breath, uncertain what comes next. Over long epochs, the planet's great currents settle into new grooves. Oceans sculpt their own paths through temperature alone, no longer stirred by tides. Some seas stagnate, their depths cold and breathless. Others become warm sanctuaries filled with new, unexpected life. The air learns from the water, carrying its changes into the sky, and so, clouds become the new timekeepers. The climate's memory stretches and fades like waves that never meet the shore. Where once the moon's presence ensured gentle correction, now the earth must learn balance through chaos. It tries, endlessly. In some ages, balance returns briefly: mild air, calm seas, generous rains. Then, as if forgetting, it slides again into extremes. The cycle of remembering and losing balance becomes its new way of living. Human descendants, if they exist in this far-off age, might chart these changes with awe rather than fear. They'll see the planet as alive, capable of moods, capable of forgetting. They will speak of the long calm and the long storm as though they are seasons of centuries. To them, climate will no longer be background, it will be the pulse of their mythology. Over deep time, mountains erode differently. Wind, now the main sculptor, grows more persistent. It carries stories of dust across entire continents, binding ecosystems together in invisible ways. Where oceans slow, the sky speeds up. Where tides fall silent, the air grows more eloquent. Earth begins to teach itself new forms of motion. The auroras shift their domains too. Without the moon's steady pull on the magnetic tides of the planet's atmosphere, the curtains of light wander. Some nights they reach the equator, some centuries they vanish entirely. The skies become artists of unpredictability, painting with charged particles across forgotten horizons. Eventually, the climate settles into patterns so long and vast that no single generation could perceive them. Ice ages and tropical blooms trade places like breaths of a sleeping giant. The changes are gentle, yes, but constant, eternal, unstoppable. The moon's absence becomes not a catastrophe, but a quiet redefinition of the word normal. Even so, there are moments of beauty in this wandering balance. Gentle rains still fall, nourishing valleys. Breezes still move through meadows. The planet, though less steady, still finds ways to be kind. It learns resilience, grace through instability, and a rhythm born of memory rather than guidance. Somewhere, perhaps, the stars themselves seem to lean closer, or perhaps it is only the Earth turning differently beneath them. Nights grow darker without lunar glow, but the heavens appear sharper, clearer, infinite. In the stillness between storms, the planet remembers its youth, the time when it had a companion, a partner in motion. Every shift in weather, every sigh of wind, carries a trace of that old partnership. The air remembers being moved by tides, the tides remember being called by the moon, and though the call is gone, the echo lingers in the rhythm of waves and the murmur of rain. The planet cannot forget, even as it learns to move alone. The seas become historians. Their depths hold layers of warmth and cold like pages in a book. Each century writes its own climate, each layer a memory of what the world once was. If ever minds arise to read those records, they will find not disaster, but transformation, the story of a world that changed shape without breaking. Clouds grow higher, thinner, more unpredictable. They travel faster over oceans that no longer pull them into pattern. The moon's absence gives the air a strange freedom, and with freedom comes wandering. Storms once bound by seasonal timing now drift through unexpected months, and the line between weather and time blurs completely. Rain falls differently now. Not in gentle, predictable showers, but in bursts, like forgotten emotions. When it comes, it floods with generosity. When it leaves too long. Yet in these rhythms, new ecosystems learn to bloom. The cycle is imperfect, but it is still life. In the deep ages of the planet, all these gentle changes accumulate. The world has not been broken, only rewritten. The script is slower, the tone softer, but every word still speaks of adaptation. The moon's departure, though monumental, becomes part of the greater story of continuity. If one could stand far above and watch, the Earth would look almost unchanged. Clouds would swirl, waves would shimmer, forests would breathe. Only the subtle wobble in its motion, the long wandering of its seasons, would whisper the truth, that the moon is gone, and yet the Earth still sings. It is a softer song now, sung by weather that shifts without reason and skies that paint without pattern. It is the voice of a planet that once leaned against a friend and now stands alone, trembling, learning, but enduring. The music of climate continues, unmoored but beautiful, echoing through the long corridors of time, carried by winds that remember the touch of the tides. When the moon disappears, Most people at first only feel the difference in their sleep. Nights become darker than anyone can remember, the sky deeper and more immense. There is no pale companion to soften the blackness, only starlight like powdered glass scattered across infinity. Yet even without that glow, people continue their routines. Cities hum, machines spin, hearts beat. Life, stubborn and adaptable, refuses to pause for the loss of a celestial friend. Streetlights take the moon's place above human settlements, their amber halos turning darkness into something familiar again. Children still play, though their shadows no longer stretch beneath lunar beams. Lovers still walk together at night, tracing constellations instead of admiring the moon's phases. The world, for all its sentiment, learns quickly how to live without the rhythm it once took for granted. Humanity keeps moving forward. In the absence of lunar tides, coastlines shift subtly, but engineers and dreamers adapt. Artificial barriers, floating harbors, and intelligent water systems maintain order. The tides once measured by lunar grace are now guided by machines, pumps, and mathematics. Humanity replaces nature's rhythm with its own inventions. It is not the same, but it works. The planet turns, and people, as always, adjust. Some cultures mourn more deeply. Poets and monks gather under star-thick skies, writing verses about the lost twin of Earth. They speak of how the moon once shaped myth, mood, and time itself. In these new nights, calendars change. Months no longer mean anything, they are renamed after solar cycles or the passing of weather. The language of the moon fades from tongues slowly, like an ancient song whispered away by generations. Yet even as it fades, a quiet nostalgia lingers. Artists paint moons that never rise, dreamers imagine its return. The stories of werewolves, harvest moons, and lovers' nights survive in memory and imagination. Humanity's longing keeps the moon alive in spirit, even when its light no longer shines upon the oceans. What is gone in sky remains in soul. Agriculture, that oldest human rhythm, feels the absence differently. Crops once influenced by lunar planting traditions now rely on technology and data. Farmers monitor soil through sensors, drones map the growth of leaves, and satellites forecast rain. The moon once whispered to the roots of crops through gravity and light. Now, human-made systems fill that role. The result is efficient, though strangely hollow. Religions shift too. For thousands of years, people worshipped the moon as a symbol of rebirth, reflection, and time. Without it, faith turns more solar, more grounded. Temples align to the rising and setting of the sun, and prayers once said under full moons are rewritten for starlit skies. Some sects continue to honor the memory of the moon, treating it as a lost deity, the silent guardian that once watched over dreams. At sea, navigation changes forever. Sailors, deprived of the silver path once painted by moonlight, must rely on technology. Satellites and algorithms replace intuition and star maps. The romance of night voyages diminishes, but trade continues, life continues. Humanity finds no end in absence, only reinvention. Even in darkness, ships cross oceans guided by human-made light. Generations born after the moon's disappearance never miss it. To them, the sky has always been this way, sharp, cold, endless. They see the Milky Way in full splendor, unblinded by lunar glow. For them, the stars themselves are closer, clearer. They grow up with different dreams, ones not bound to the cycle of waxing and waning, but to the constancy of faraway suns. And yet, the older generations remember. They tell stories of moonlit nights when shadows were soft and familiar. They recall the calm glow that once seemed eternal. The moon becomes a myth, a shared memory that connects humanity across ages. To speak of it is to speak of beauty, of stillness, of something that once made the world gentler. Over time, humanity learns that the moon's absence doesn't end the world, it only changes how the world feels. The air is cooler at night, the tides quieter, and the darkness more complete. But cities glow brighter to compensate. Space exploration continues, driven now not by curiosity, but by a kind of longing. Scientists search the heavens for moons orbiting other worlds, wondering what it might be like to stand under them. Psychologically, the loss of the moon leaves its mark. Dreams become darker, sleep more restless. The subtle lunar influence on circadian rhythms vanishes, and nights seem longer than they are. People begin to light artificial moons in their homes, circular lamps that mimic gentle lunar hues. Sleep therapy becomes a new industry. Humanity replaces the celestial with the synthetic. In the countryside, the absence of the moon transforms the way night feels. Animals that once relied on its light adapt, and so do humans. Stargazing becomes sacred. Villages turn off lights once a week to see the full canopy of stars. In that vast stillness, people rediscover humility, the smallness of human life compared to the endlessness above. Technology fills the void more efficiently than anyone could have predicted. Energy grids adjust to new oceanic behaviors, agriculture stabilizes under artificial systems, space stations orbit Earth, glimmering like a string of tiny moons. Humanity becomes its own source of light, its own gravitational balance. The planet is quieter but more self-reliant than ever before. Still, not all adapt so easily. Poets, dreamers, and old souls feel the absence in their bones. They write of loneliness that doesn't come from loss, but from knowing that something once constant has left forever. The moon was not just a light, it was a mirror, reflecting humanity's changing moods. Without it, nights feel less like time passing and more like eternity staring back. Over centuries, art changes tone. Painters depict deeper skies, colder oceans, and cities bathed in artificial halos. Sculptors carve empty circles, symbols of longing and persistence. The moon becomes a metaphor for memory, for everything humanity cannot control or restore. In that absence, beauty takes on a new depth, the elegance of impermanence. The sciences, meanwhile, thrive. Freed from lunar interference, astronomers can observe stars and galaxies with unprecedented clarity. The missing light reveals new cosmic details. The universe opens wider, as though rewarding the loss with a deeper view. Humanity, for all its sorrow, gains perspective, learning to measure not only light but the meaning of darkness itself. Some centuries later, people might try to create a replacement. Enormous satellites, designed to reflect sunlight, are placed in orbit to mimic the moon's light. For a time, it works. The artificial moon rises on schedule, casting a silvery imitation glow. But something feels different. Too precise, too mechanical. It lacks the gentle imperfections that once gave night its soul. Humanity realizes that not everything beautiful can be rebuilt. In daily life, though, little changes. Children grow, markets open, meals are shared, songs are sung. The moon's departure, once a shock, becomes history. People adapt, as they always have. The resilience of human life proves greater than any cosmic loss. The world keeps spinning, slightly wobbling, but never stopping. Life is continuity disguised as change. In some places, festivals are held to remember the moon. Lanterns are floated on rivers, representing tides that no longer rise and fall. People light them not in grief, but in gratitude, a ritual of memory. It is not mourning, it is acknowledgement that the world once had something rare, and that life has learned to move on without it. Education evolves, too. Children learn about the moon in books, as they do about dinosaurs or extinct forests. They learn of how its pull shaped tides, stabilized seasons, and inspired art. Teachers speak softly when describing it, as though explaining the loss of a friend rather than a rock. To them, the moon becomes a symbol of balance and change. Nighttime on Earth becomes more intimate. Without the lunar glow, stars dominate the heavens. The Milky Way, unblurred, stretches from horizon to horizon, turning every night into a cathedral of starlight. Humanity, for all its cities and machines, feels a quiet awe. The moon is gone, but wonder remains. In its absence, the universe feels both emptier and more infinite. New generations find meaning in other rhythms. They measure time by solar alignments, track life by planetary movements, and celebrate the glow of faraway galaxies. The moon's disappearance teaches humanity that nothing, not even the most constant, is eternal. From that lesson comes a deeper wisdom to cherish what remains, and to adapt with grace. As centuries become millennia, the memory of the moon softens into legend. It becomes the subject of lullabies again, not as something that shines above, but as something that once did. Parents tell their children stories of a glowing companion who watched over humanity in its youth. The sky feels emptier, but the stories fill the gap with light. Civilizations rise and fall, but life continues. Whether in concrete towers or green valleys, humans still look up. They may not see the moon, but they see its absence, and somehow, that too becomes beautiful. The dark sky becomes a space for imagination, for dreams unshaped by familiar glow. The human mind, ever creative, turns emptiness into possibility. And somewhere deep in the collective heart of humanity, there remains an understanding. The moon did not die. It only went away. The connection between Earth and its once companion lingers in the pull of memory, in the faint tug of tides that still echo through oceans, and in the rhythm of life that goes on. The world learned to live in its own light. In the end, humanity does what it always does, it endures. It carries on through change, through darkness, through longing. The moon's departure becomes one more verse in the song of survival, a reminder that even when something immeasurable disappears, life adapts, breathes, and continues. The nights are darker now, yes, but still, they are filled with stars. Without the moon, the sky becomes a canvas without its familiar companion. The nights stretch wider and darker, yet something essential feels absent, that silver companion who once watched every lover, traveler, and poet. Eclipses, once sacred alignments of shadow and light, become legends of a sky that no longer knows how to hide the sun. The earth, though still spinning, feels a little emptier, as if it has forgotten a rhythm that once comforted every creature beneath it. No lunar eclipse stains the world red now, no solar eclipse tempts the curious to gather and gaze. The ancient dance between earth, moon, and sun ends quietly, without farewell. Civilizations once marked their calendars by such events, measured destiny by celestial meetings. Without them, humanity learns to live with a quieter sky still filled with stars, yes, but missing the rare, breathtaking pauses that once made people look up together. United by wonder. The loss of eclipses means more than missing spectacle. It's the end of an ancient reminder of cosmic connection. The moon's shadow used to glide gently across continents, turning day to dusk, or to reverence. Without it, the sun shines unchallenged, eternal, predictable. The poetry of shadow disappears. People still tell stories of the time the sky could turn dark in midday, but now it's only a story, fading at the edges with each generation. The moon once whispered to mythology. It was the guardian of dreams, the symbol of love, madness, and renewal. Now, storytellers struggle to replace it. Children grow up hearing tales of a soft orb that pulled the seas and lit the nights, but when they look up, they see only depthless stars. The romance of moonlight fades into memory, the word itself becoming ancient, a relic from when the world still had a silver lantern above its nights. In old songs, lovers once swore under moonlight, believing its glow carried their promises to the heavens. Without that gentle witness, love still blooms, but the setting is different, darker, less adorned. The night feels more private now, but also lonelier. The moon once bound hearts to cycles of growth, of return, of reflection. Its absence turns time into something straighter, colder. The sky no longer blushes or sighs, it only watches. There were gods tied to the moon once, goddesses of fertility, hunters, dreamkeepers. Their stories now become myth within myth, fading like footprints on a forgotten shore. Humanity replaces them with new symbols, but they lack the same soft pull. The moon's changing face once mirrored human emotion, waxing with hope, waning with sorrow. Without that mirror, people lose a quiet, cosmic empathy that once soothed them without words. The darkness deepens, not just visually, but emotionally. The moonless night feels vast and honest, yet also indifferent. For dreamers and wanderers, it becomes harder to find comfort in the night. Artists paint with less silver, writers describe less glow, and the silence of the heavens grows thicker. The moon had been a companion in solitude, now solitude itself feels sharper, as though the sky has stopped listening. Eclipses once reminded humankind that great alignments were possible, that even chaos had patterns. Priests once knelt as the sun dimmed, emperors trembled, and the world shared a moment of humility. Without that celestial theater, there are fewer moments when humanity pauses to feel small and connected. The moon's vanishing steals not just beauty but perspective, the sense that light and darkness belong to a greater harmony. In the ocean of space, the Earth now orbits unaccompanied. No satellite dances beside it, reflecting sunlight down in gentle arcs. Astronomers still study, still dream, but the sky offers fewer stories to tell. The mathematical perfection remains: stars, planets, orbits, but the emotional poetry is gone. The moon's absence is not just a physical void, it's the silence of something that once made humanity feel seen. Festivals that once celebrated full moons, harvest moons, and blue moons vanish or adapt. Cultures that built their calendars on lunar cycles now follow only the solar rhythm. The loss seems small to the rational mind but monumental to the spirit. Entire rituals lose meaning, prayers to unseen moons become nostalgic traditions, carried by those who remember that the night once had a gentle face. The word moonlight becomes an echo. Poets still use it, though it now refers to memory more than experience. Artists paint it from imagination, guessing at what silver radiance might have felt like. For centuries, people had learned to sleep beneath it, to find safety in its glow. Now, the darkness presses heavier on rooftops and forests, and dreams take on deeper shades of blue. Without the moon, the stars grow sharper, countless, glittering, and cold. The Milky Way stretches with greater clarity, but its light lacks warmth. Where once the moon softened the stars' brilliance, now the cosmos stares back unfiltered, vast, and ancient. People begin to understand how small they truly are. The moon once cushioned that truth, a familiar friend between Earth and eternity. New stories arise, of course. Humanity is relentless in its need to narrate the cosmos. People speak of the moon as if it were a lost civilization, a vanished soul. Its pull remains in memory, its influence in language: moonstruck, lunacy, honeymoon. The moon becomes myth itself, a symbol of what it means to have something beautiful and lose it, to keep feeling its absence even when time moves on. Science remembers it differently, not as a ghost, but as a teacher. The moon taught humanity tides, time, orbit, reflection. Its lessons live on in equations, in satellites that mimic its journey, in lamps designed to recall its hue. Yet no invention captures the delicate motion of moonlight across water, or the quiet awe of seeing its reflection tremble on a lake at night. Some things science can explain but not replace. The storytellers, however, persist. They whisper to children that once upon a time, the night had a face. They tell how it changed and grew, how it disappeared and returned. Some children believe these are fairy tales. Others look at the dark sky and wish they could see it for themselves, the pale guardian of dreams. And sometimes, even without it, they still feel a soft light in their imagination, proof that memory, like gravity, still holds. The sea misses it too. The water used to glimmer with its reflection, waves catching its silver threads like music. Now, the sea shines only under stars, glittering cold and distant. Sailors still look upward, but navigation feels less personal. The moon once guided both compass and heart, now they steer by calculation alone. Progress is steady, but the journey feels less enchanted. Ancient monuments that once aligned with moonrise and moonset now stand misaligned, their purpose blurred by time. Stone circles, temples, pyramids, all built to honor the dance of light and shadow, now seem like questions left unanswered. Archaeologists study their design, but the mystery deepens, for the performer they were built for has vanished. The stones remember what the sky has forgotten. Even language feels different. Words once shaped by lunar rhythm lose their pulse. The phrases of old calendars, waxing, waning, crescent, gibbous, become poetic curiosities, like fossils of thought. Without monthly cycles to mark mood and time, the sense of natural progression fades. The moon once gave rhythm to life's inner tides. Now, time feels endless, smooth, and strange. Nighttime itself transforms. It's darker, yes, but also strangely clean, as though stripped of emotion. The moon once painted clouds in silver and trees in quiet contrast. Without it, everything blends into shadow. The beauty of the night is now one of austerity, the kind found in deserts and deep space. Some find peace in it, others dread it. Either way, The night has changed forever. Dreams become darker too. The subconscious, once lulled by moonlight, now dives deeper into the black sea of sleep. Dreams lose their silvery tones, becoming heavier, filled with earth instead of air. Some say people sleep less soundly, as if their minds are reaching for something that no longer shines above them. The moon was never just light, it was rhythm for the spirit. But humanity, ever adaptable, finds ways to honor the loss. Cities install soft lamps that mimic the moon's hue, artists create luminescent sculptures that rise in parks at night. People gather to remember it, not with sorrow but with quiet gratitude. For even if it is gone, it once was, and that was enough to shape every tide, every story, every gaze that ever turned upward. In the end, the absence of the moon teaches humanity what it always taught: impermanence. The moon had shown, through its phases, that everything changes, fades, and returns. Now its final lesson is the one of complete departure: how to continue when the cycles end. The night remains, vast and unblinking, and beneath it, humanity learns to create its own gentle light.